It was Ted who eventually suggested they get more comfortable, a euphemism so transparent it would have been comical under different circumstances. They moved to the master bedroom, that same room where Zaph's world had begun to unravel a week ago. The burgundy comforter had been replaced with a deep blue one, but otherwise the stage remained the same for the second act. What happened next was both mechanical and surreal. Bodies moved, configurations shifted. Sue, now understanding that Zaph's participation was motivated by something darker than desire, adapted her approach accordingly. Less seductive, more practical, a business partner rather than a lover. Ted, for his part, seemed almost pathetically grateful for Mary's enthusiasm, his earlier confidence giving way to an eagerness that bordered on desperation. Zaph moved through the motions like an automaton, his mind cataloging every gasp, every whispered instruction between Ted and Mary, evidence for a case he was building against his wife in the courtroom of his mind. When it was over, when they lay tangled in sheets that smelled of sweat and expensive cologne, he felt nothing but a cold satisfaction. Phase 1 complete. That was, Ted began, then trailed off, apparently unable to find an adequate descriptor. Interesting, Sue supplied, her gaze sliding to Zaph with something like recognition in her eyes. She understood what was happening, he realized. She recognized the calculation behind his participation, perhaps because she employed similar strategies herself. Mary lay with her head on Ted's chest, her expression dreamy and satisfied, in a way that would once have gutted Zaph, but now only strengthened his resolve. "We should do this again," she murmured, not looking at her husband. "Definitely," Ted agreed too quickly. He stroked Mary's hair with proprietary fondness. "Maybe next weekend?" And there it was, the trap, baited and set. All Zaph had to do was wait for them to walk into it. Over the following weeks, a pattern established itself. Dinners at the Morrow's house every Saturday night, followed by increasingly elaborate sexual encounters that Zaph participated in with detached precision. He became a student of their dynamics, the way Ted deferred to Sue in public but attempted to dominate in private. The growing attachment Mary displayed toward Ted, hanging on his every word. The subtle power plays between Sue and Mary, a contest neither seemed aware they were engaged in. At work, Ted grew increasingly generous, offering Zaph bonuses and expensive computer parts, 256 megabyte RAM sticks worth hundreds of dollars, casually handed over as if they were pocket change. "Just some old RAM I have laying around," he'd say with a dismissive wave. Guilt payments, Zaph recognized, though whether Ted felt guilty about sleeping with Mary or about involving Zaph in their arrangement wasn't clear. After about a month of this arrangement, the first crack appeared. Mary announced that she wanted to visit her family and bring Sue with her, a girls' trip that raised immediate red flags in Zaph's mind. "Since when are you and Sue so close?" he asked as Mary packed, his tone carefully neutral despite the suspicion roiling in his gut. Mary shrugged, not meeting his eyes. "We've gotten to know each other pretty well, don't you think?" A sly smile, one that made her look like a stranger. "Anyway, her parents live only an hour from mine. It makes sense." Zaph nodded, filing away this information for future reference. "How long will you be gone?" "Just a couple of days. You and Ted can have your boy time." She zipped her suitcase with finality. "Play video games or whatever it is you do at the shop all day." The dismissive comment stung more than it should have, given everything else that had happened. But Zaph merely smiled and said, "Have a good trip," already planning how to use their absence to his advantage. The evening after the women departed, Ted invited Zaph over for beer and pizza. They sat in the living room playing StarCraft matches on Ted's computer, the hours blurring together in a haze of artificial camaraderie and alcohol. It was almost possible to forget the complexities of their relationship in the simple rush of competition and conquest. Almost, but not quite. "I'm glad we can still hang out like this," Ted said during a break between games, his words slightly slurred. "Just as friends, you know." No weirdness. Zaph took a long pull from his beer to avoid responding immediately. The absurdity of Ted's statement that there was no weirdness between a man and his wife's lover was almost funny in a dark, twisted way. "Yeah," he said finally, "no weirdness." Ted seemed encouraged by the response. "I've got to say, man, I was worried at first. about how you'd handle all this. Some guys," he shook his head, "they can't separate the physical from the emotional, you know?" "And you can?" Zaph kept his tone light, curious rather than accusatory. Ted's expression clouded. "Usually." He picked at the label on his beer bottle, avoiding Zaph's eyes. "Mary's special, though. She's got this, I don't know, this energy." Warning bells clanged in Zaph's mind, though he maintained his neutral expression. "She's always been intense," he offered, watching Ted carefully. "Yeah, intense. That's it." Ted nodded vigorously. "But in a good way, right? Like she's fully present in whatever she's doing, whoever she's with." He caught himself glancing up guiltily. "Not that Sue isn't great too, and the four of us together, that works. That really works." Zaph made a non-committal sound, letting Ted ramble on, each word digging the older man's grave a little deeper. This was information he could use. Ted's growing attachment to Mary, the wedge it could drive between him and Sue. "Hey," Zaph said, changing the subject before Ted could become too introspective. "I need to stop by my place. I've got some cash stashed away. Thought I might treat us to something better than pizza tomorrow night." Ted brightened immediately. "Sure, man, I'll drive." The house on Elm Street was cold and unwelcoming after several days of neglect. The heat turned low to save money while they were gone. Zaph led Ted to the bedroom, making a show of digging through the closet until he located an old shoebox pushed to the back. "Just give me a second," he said, carrying the box to the bed and opening it with deliberate slowness. Inside should have been nearly $2,000. Cash he'd been setting aside for months, ever since Mary's habit of writing bad checks had nearly gotten them evicted from their previous apartment. Emergency money, get-out-of-town money if things went bad again. The box was empty. Zaph stared at it for a long moment, a hollow feeling spreading through his chest. He'd suspected, of course. Why else bring Ted here for this little performance? But seeing the confirmation still hit him with unexpected force. "Everything okay?" Ted asked, hovering in the doorway. Zaph closed the box carefully, his movements precise despite the rage building inside him. "Seems Mary found my rainy day fund," he said, keeping his voice level with effort. "Guess that's what they're using for their trip." Ted's face fell into lines of awkward sympathy. "Ah, man, that sucks. Look, don't worry about it. Dinner's on me tomorrow. Hell, stay at my place again tonight if you want. No sense coming back to a cold house." Zaph nodded, the plan forming more clearly now. "Thanks. I appreciate it." Mary returned 2 days later, flushed with excitement and laden with shopping bags that confirmed where Zaph's savings had gone. Sue seemed equally pleased with their excursion, though something in her expression changed when she looked at Ted, a wariness that hadn't been there before. Zaph cornered Mary outside Ted and Sue's house, pulling her aside while Sue went inside. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice low and controlled. Mary sighed as if he were a child interrupting adult business. "What is it?" "The money in my shoebox. Why did you take it?" Her expression flickered between surprise and defiance before settling on dismissal. "I don't know what you're talking about." The casual lie ignited something in Zaph. His hand shot out, connecting with her cheek in a slap that echoed in the quiet suburban street. "Don't lie to me," he hissed. "Where is the money?" Fear flashed in Mary's eyes. Real fear this time, not the performative kind she'd sometimes displayed during their bedroom confrontations. I spent it," she admitted, one hand cradling her reddened cheek. "All of it? $2,000? She nodded, unable to meet his gaze. "I'm sorry, I wanted nice things for once. Things like Sue has." The pathetic explanation only fueled Zaph's contempt. "Tomorrow morning I'm taking you to the bus station," he said, his voice flat and final. "I'm sending you to live with your mother." Mary's head snapped up, eyes wide with panic. "What? No, you can't do that." "I just did." Zaph turned away, unwilling to engage further. The decision had been made long before this moment. The empty shoebox had merely provided the convenient excuse. And the next morning, true to his word, Zaph drove Mary to the Greyhound station, handed her a one-way ticket to her mother's town, and watched without emotion as she boarded the bus, tears streaming down her face. He didn't wait to see it depart. Phase 2 complete. When Zaph returned to the computer shop, Ted was waiting with concern etched on his face. "Mary called Sue," he said without preamble. "Said you put her on a bus? What's going on, man?" Zaph shrugged, affecting a wounded demeanor that wasn't entirely fabrication. "Found out she emptied my savings. $2,000, Ted. Money I'd been putting aside for emergencies." He shook his head, letting his voice break slightly. "It was the last straw, you know? After everything, ... Ted's expression softened to one of sympathy. "Shit, I'm sorry. That's rough." He clapped Zaph on the shoulder. "Look, don't go home to that empty house. Stay with us for a while, until you're feeling better." "I couldn't impose." "No imposition." Ted's grip tightened. "I insist. What are friends for, right?" Friends. The word almost made Zaph laugh, but he maintained his mask of grateful dejection. "Thanks, man. Just for a few days until I figure things out." Ted nodded, clearly pleased with his own magnanimity. "Consider it done. And hey, we're going bowling tonight with some friends from Sue's work. Come with us. It'll take your mind off things." Zaph accepted with appropriate reluctance, his true feelings buried beneath layers of calculation. The game was entering its final phase, pieces moving into position for the endgame he'd been planning since New Year's Day.